I'd like to ask about the recent developments, especially the UK election. Your movement, and of course you have supported the Labour Party and Jeremy Corbyn for the past few years. And do you think the UK election results are going to contribute, and the upcoming Brexit is going to contribute to EU's consolidation or disintegration?
Well, first, it was a devastating blow for all progressives around the world, not just in Britain. And it just goes to show that after the crisis of 2008, we are in a process of disintegration of progressive politics around the world. From Brazil, Bolsonaro, to Trump, to Brexit, to what's happening in the European Union. But to answer your question specifically, on the one hand, the way Brexit has progressed over the last 3 years, it has killed off secessionist movements within the rest of the European Union. So Marine Le Pen in France now doesn't dare speak about Frexit. Matteo Salvini in Italy is not talking about Italexit. Grexit has never been a project by Greeks. It was always something that we were being threatened of or with. So on the one hand, it seems as if Brexit is consolidating the EU, it is ending the centrifugal forces that are tearing it apart. But on the other hand, and that is the most serious aspect of it, because the establishment in Brussels and in Berlin and in Paris now feel confident because they are not facing any more exits, they are continuing their business as usual attitude when business cannot continue as usual. So the European Union is fragmenting on the ground. If you look at public debt is being renationalized. So more and more of Italian debt is now owned by Italian banks. More and more of Spanish debt is consolidated within Spain. So instead of having a kind of consolidation of the European Union, of sharing risk, sharing debt, sharing resources, recycling surpluses and deficits, we're moving in the opposite direction. On the one hand, it seems as if the European Union is more united, while under the surface, it is fragmenting much faster because of Brexit. My view is completely opposite. Brussels suffered a major defeat, along with progressives, in the election of the 12th of December. In a sense, their strategy backfired. It was a complete disaster, because they were banking on delaying Brexit again and again and again with these extensions to the Article 50 process, until there would be a second referendum and Brexit would be cancelled. They wanted to rub the faces of the Brexiteers in the defeat of Brexit. So effectively, Brussels decided to take the side of the hard remainers, who were either invoking the revocation of Article 50 or a second referendum. Donald Tusk was very clear on this. You only have to listen to what he was saying. He was effectively siding with the People's Vote campaign, the second referendum campaign. And the result is they put in power, collectively, Boris Johnson, who wants to blow the whole thing up. So now, the European Union has two choices. One is to continue this recalcitrance, this attitude of confrontation with Britain. If they do that, they will prove to be even less intelligent than I thought. Because the Eurozone alone has a 120 billion euro surplus, trade surplus with the United Kingdom. At the time when they are losing markets in China, at the time when there is a recession throughout German industry, to jeopardize that, it seems to me it would be very silly of the European Union to continue the confrontation with London. The great issue is this, that what the EU would like is a zero tariff agreement with the UK that is a minimalist trade deal, without giving the UK anything when it comes to standards, regulations, and a removal of checks at the borders. I don't believe Boris Johnson will go for that. He would prefer to go on a no-deal World Trade Organization agreement, where there are small tariffs that are bad for German industry, and then he can push the negotiation, into infinity. So these are the two extreme positions. Maybe there will be some kind of agreement in between, but for that the European Union must move away from the strategy of confrontation that was summed up by Michel Barnier. Michel Barnier is the European Union chief negotiator, who 2 years ago said there will be a two-phase negotiation, if you remember. He said, first you will give us everything we want, and then we will discuss the future. Yeah. Now they have to discuss the future. You see, they have 1 year until the end of 2020 in order to complete the long-term relationship. President Macron and Angela Merkel must pick up the phone and tell the negotiators in Brussels what the specifics of the long-term relationship must be. If they leave it to the technocrats to keep dragging this thing on and on and on, we're going to have a confrontation and a WTO thing, which will be awful because in the end, that will be the first step towards a free trade agreement between the United Kingdom and the United States under Donald Trump's terms, which is going to be terrible for the United Kingdom and terrible for the European Union. In 2016, before the referendum in Britain, I had a public debate in the centre of London with one of my heroes from old times, Tariq Ali, the famous activist, author, filmmaker, a wonderful man. And we were on different sides of the argument. Both of us coming from the left. He was supporting Brexit. He was the original Lexiteer, left-wing Brexit supporter. And during that debate, his main argument was that he wants Brexit because it will divide the ruling class. It will wreck the Tory party. The Tory party will never survive Brexit because the pro-European and the Eurosceptic Tories are going to clash so fiercely. It will be an opportunity for the first time in many, many years for the left to rule over them. My response was that this is pie in the sky, it's wishful thinking. The ruling class know that this is a class war and that they're exceptionally good at, in the end, even if they have clashes and disagreements amongst themselves, sticking together. It is the progressive side of politics which has a fantastic habit at dividing and multiplying. And that Brexit is going to have exactly the opposite effect. It will, in the end, unite the Tories and divide the progressives. And this is why, firstly, Brexit, or a campaign for exiting the European Union, can only benefit the right. And secondly, it also has a toxifying, poisoning or poisonous effect on the relationship between different working classes. Because the moment you have a left-wing political party saying, we want to get out of the EU, we want to end freedom of movement, no more Polish workers or Turkish workers or Greek workers coming to Britain to work because they are pushing wages of the British working class down. The moment you go down that road, effectively you adopt yourself a toxic, racist, and economically false perspective that in the end divides the Turkish working class, the Greek working class, the French working class, the British working class. This is why DiEM 2025 has been steadfast from the beginning that freedom of movement, openness of borders, must be an essential aspect of every progressive agenda everywhere in the world. Firstly, the opposition between the liberal establishment, like Macron, and the nationalists, Orban, the Polish government, Matteo Salvini, Alternative for Deutschland. This opposition, which has been portrayed in the last few years, since 2016, 15, 16, as the great clash in the European Union. It's a fake opposition. The nationalists, like Le Pen, like Salvini, like Orban, need the liberal establishment. The liberal establishment is promoting policies that are creating discontent, which is the fuel of the nationalists' campaign. If the liberal establishment didn't exist, if Macron didn't exist, Orban would want Macron to be invented, and vice versa. The liberal establishment needs the nationalists in order to solidify its own electoral basis. So the only reason why Macron was elected, because of Le Pen. So Macron owes a debt of gratitude to Le Pen and Le Pen to Macron. This is why we at DiEM25 say that these two kinds of individuals, groups of individuals, are very different, anthropologically, culturally, very different. Okay, and they genuinely dislike each other. But politically speaking, they are accomplices. And this is the tragedy of the European Union. It is being guided by a fake opposition, where in the end, their differences are far less significant than what unites them. So the point you made about Orban and Macron being as one when it comes to Fortress Europe is part of this. This is another manifestation of this partnership, implicit, unplanned partnership between the liberal establishment and the nationalist international, as we call it. But one comment, if I may, by which to conclude. The idea of walls around a country or a block of countries that stops the foreigners, the aliens, the migrants, the refugees, the others from coming in. It does not consolidate. It does not strengthen the center. This is a great fallacy. When you build walls, like the US-Mexican border, for instance, all you do is you poison the politics of both sides of the wall, and you are preventing the genuine consolidation of that which lies within the walls. The division that the wall creates then spreads within society. So if you look at the United States, every village, every town, I should say, or city, or community, is poisoned by the mentality of division that was created by the US-Mexican border. So if we think that in the European Union, we are going to create a better Europe, a more homogeneous, better consolidated, integrated Europe by building a huge wall around the EU, we are very sadly mistaken. It's not going to be easy. This is the hardest task we have because of the economic crisis, because of the crisis of capitalism, because of the debt crisis, because after 2008, European capitalism has not managed to recover at all. We have the lowest level of investment in the history of Europe compared to savings and liquidity. That's why it's not recovering. It's got nothing to do with Syrians, Turks, Ghanaians or Nigerians. But when people are looking at the future and they see something that looks dismal, it's really very easy for a tin pot dictator, an authoritarian politician, to get a soapbox, stand on it and say, they are the problem. It is the Jews, the Turks, the Muslims, the Greeks, the Germans. Say, well, we'll make you proud again. We'll cleanse our country from all these foreigners. We'll build the wall. Build the wall. Donald Trump. It's so easy to do it since time immemorial. Whenever a society has been in turmoil, whenever society has had a crisis, whether it was the the plague, it was always a foreigner who brought it in, whether it's depression, it's the foreigners who are taking our jobs. Yeah? So this is the challenge we have as progressives, how to illuminate the true causes of the discontent, and they have nothing to do with migration. There is no migration crisis. Today, if you look at it at the global level, migration is 3%. 3% of the Earth's population have migrated or are migrating. What was it in 1960? 3%. So there is nothing today that justifies the moral panic over migration. In Greece in 1991, when the Soviet Union collapsed and the socialist countries imploded, so we had 1 million refugees coming to Greece. It created some tensions and so on. We forgot about it very quickly after that. Why? Because it was not a period of systemic capitalist crisis. Now is a period of systemic capitalist crisis. So our task as DiEM25 is firstly to point out that you can never improve your circumstances by poisoning your soul with lies. As a European Union, we have an obligation to resist agreements like the EU-Turkey Treaty, which treats the Turkish people with disrespect, the Syrians, the Afghans, the Pakistanis with disrespect. Effectively, the EU is paying Erdogan billions of euros to do what? To allow the European Union to avoid its obligations to refugees. That is not a good start for shared prosperity within Europe, but this is a very hard message to push through. We can only do it by being radical. The right are radical. They say kill the foreigner. Yeah? They say that. There was a member of parliament in Greece who said if there are no deaths on the Aegean, they will keep coming. So kill them. They're very radical. And there's something refreshing about it. It's they're honest. So we have to be radical in exactly the same way. Open the borders. Well, DiEM25 has one position.
Yeah.
We're against both the EU and Erdogan. We're against using people as pawns. The EU is doing it, Erdogan is doing it. People are not means to other ends. And that is a principle that we should all live by, whether we're in Turkey, in Belgium, in Brazil, in Mexico, in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Simple. Oh yeah, we know what they've outlined. Look, it's a good thing that the European Union is now speaking of a Green New Deal, right? We've been working on it, we campaigned for it in the European Parliament elections. We, as a movement, DiEM25, came up with a Green New Deal that was comprehensive, scientifically powerful, politically progressive, ecologically sustainable. So in a sense, okay, they've adopted at least the language that we were pushing for. But there is a very sad, sorry, and long tradition in the European Union of adopting labels in order to deny the substance. I'll give you an example or two. We created the euro in the Eurozone, the common currency, and in our extreme stupidity, we did not create a banking union. So, you have one monetary area, one central bank, and 19 banking systems, which, you only need to be 10-year-old to understand that it's crazy. And the result was the banking crisis, the debt crisis, it's continuing to this day. So some of us, especially economists, were campaigning for years for a banking union. In 2012, June 2012, and you see how this relates to the Green New Deal. The European Union Council, under a lot of pressure from Mario Monti, who was the technocratic Prime Minister of Italy at the time. Somebody was very close to Angela Merkel. Too close, some would say. But nevertheless, he understood that Italy needed a banking union, otherwise Italian banks were gone. So he put his foot down and said, well, nobody leaves the European Union Council in that meeting unless we all agree to a banking union. And Merkel said, okay, fine, let's have a banking union. So we had the banking union since then, in name. We still don't have a banking union. So they adopted the banking union in name. They created all the institutions, the SSM, the single resolution mechanism. We still don't have a banking union. Now we have all the offices, the beautiful acronyms and the bureaucracy, but we don't have a banking union. They created it so as not to create it. The same thing happened with, you may remember a couple of years ago, Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, demanded a Eurozone budget. Now we have a Eurozone budget. But in this room, if we put out the money we have in our pocket together, this is probably more than the budget of the Eurozone budget that we have. In other words, we don't have one. So they claim the mantle in order to ensure that the substance is not there. I very much fear, and this is what DiEM25 fears, that they adopted the idea of the Green New Deal so as not to have a Green New Deal. And if you want a very quick proof of that, is the gentleman that they have appointed, the commissioner who is responsible for it, Jens Timmermans. Mr. Timmermans comes with a history. He was one of the inventors of austerity. In 2009, when mountains of money were taken away from taxpayers and given to bankers, he, together with Mr. Steinbrück, who was the federal finance minister of Germany, they devised austerity. That while you are giving all this money to the bankers, effectively you're reducing expenditure on hospitals, on health, on education, you push down pensions and so on and so forth. If extraterrestrials were watching from space, they would think, what idiots all these people are. Firstly, we don't want oil and gas. It's finished. Well, just leave it there. It only damages the environment. Economically, it makes no sense. It's much cheaper to produce renewable energy now than anything from gas or oil. All the good jobs will come from the renewables. It will not come from platforms drilling into the sea and destroying the planet. So, and imagine, so we are competing in the Eastern Mediterranean. We are all, we may even end up with war over something we shouldn't want. Is this not the definition of stupidity? Organized stupidity. So what DiEM is saying is, let's agree to leave gas and oil in the ground, and let's cooperate in order to share this beautiful part of the world, the most beautiful part of the world, the Eastern Mediterranean, create a network of renewable energy. We have so much sun, wind. We can power our homes and our factories across the Eastern Mediterranean on the basis of collaboration, not confrontation. For us, and if you look at our at DiEM's European New Deal, European Green New Deal, which is a 2-year-old document now, we're very clear on this. We're saying that this is not simply related. It does not. It's not confined to the EU. So, for instance, one of the things we've been saying to our friends in Britain is it really doesn't matter whether you get out of the EU or not. You are still in Europe. Britain is not going to sail away. Whether Turkey is in or outside of the EU. We are sharing this part of the world. So, what we are proposing is this: Turkey has its central bank. Britain has its central bank. The European, the common currency area has the ECB. Sweden has its central bank. And there is the European Investment Bank, which concerns the whole of the EU. Well, what you need is to create your own investment bank. The Brits must create their own investment bank. Jeremy Corbyn was proposing that. Now we have a different government, but it's possible to create counterparts of the European Investment Bank in every country that doesn't have it. And for the investment banks of Europe, including Turkey, they can coordinate the issue of bonds, and then the central banks of Europe, Britain, Sweden, Turkey, can also coordinate the purchase of those bonds, if needs be. Mm-hmm. And then we can have a very large sum of money that we can distribute towards green renewables across this area, because it's the best way of creating renewable energy, of having a grid, because we don't have wind enough in Greece, or when the Germans have no sun, and then they could be wind in Germany when you don't have. So you need a grid that's smart, that is integrated, and it's commonly funded, and that can take place independently of whether you are in the EU or not in the EU.